Hello and welcome to a thing. This is my 1980 something Honda Goldwing GL 1200. I bought it about a year and a half ago. Rode it home. It was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It was like, I don't know, 10 p.m. or something like that. And then it never ran again. And the Ducati's also broken, and I need to ride a motorcycle. So I have most of the parts to hopefully make this work again. So let's see if we can make that happen, perhaps. I've actually made several attempts at fixing this bike since I got it, all of which have ended in failure and left me frustrated to the point where I was going to give the bike away to whoever would get it out of my shop because, as you can tell, it's quite large. But values on these things have kind of gone up a bit, and I couldn't justify getting rid of it because it was worth so much. And the main problem with it is a mistake that I really should not have made. I did not check inside the fuel tank before I bought it. It was incredibly rusty, broke loose, and totaled the carbs. So I completely cleaned, ultrasonic cleaned, rebuilt the carburetors, kind of haphazardly replaced the fuel lines, all kinds of stuff. It still doesn't work. I hate motorcycle carbs so very, very, very much. The passageways in them are so incredibly tiny, they clog extremely easy. It's all in all just an exercise in intense frustration. I also deleted the secondary air injection system here in the exhaust. So the solution is actually to take my nice, reliable Japanese motorcycle and put German parts on it. In this case, we have a carburetor intended for a German Volkswagen Beetle, and this TIG-welded aluminum manifold, which is very nice, that came from somewhere near Germany, I believe. This one, these are getting hard to find these days. This one I like because there is nowhere for the fuel to puddle. Everything is slanted downward, and it's got a nice bracket there for the throttle and all that sort of happy horse crap. So this is going to go where this went. This is not a performance modification. The downsides here are you will get slightly less performance out of the bike, you will get slightly less fuel economy out of the bike, and in cold weather you will have carb icing issues. However, it's only one carburetor. Easy to clean, much larger passageways, less likely to get crap stuck in them. But that's just one part of the equation. The other part is the fuel tank, and you may have noticed I've got quite a bit of evapor rust sitting here. This has been in there for about a month now. So now I have to try and pump it out somehow and see what the tank looks like. But first, I think we'll get this on there, maybe get it running off of external fuel, and then we'll worry about the tank. The reason I'm not taking the tank out is because, I mean, look at it. That's the fuel tank. There's a lot of bike around the fuel tank. Don't buy one of these. They suck. Do never buy an old Goldwing, especially one that's not fuel injected. These are absolutely garbage ownership experiences. Even beyond that, there's so many more issues with these. The rear brake master cylinder, absolutely trashed on all of these. I need to pull it and rebuild it. Timing belt needs done, water pump goes bad, stator goes bad on every single goddamn one of these, to the point where there are actually kits to put a car alternator on it, which is probably what I'll do, because I'm putting a carburetor on it. Might as well just finish making it a Honda Accord. Beyond that, it's just kind of haggard in more ways than one. God only knows what that's about. And this never opens enough. It's so freaking frustrating. Like, for the love of God, just make it hinge a little bit further. My blood pressure's going up just talking about this, but hopefully to some point, hopefully eventually I'll get this bike to the point where my only concern is what I was excited about when I got it, which was putting a nifty radio and speakers in here so that I can listen to music while I cruise down the road. I did recently do a 200-mile trip on a BMW R1100 RT. Good bike. I just kind of decided it wasn't quite for me. If I was going to do that sort of thing, really I just want a big V10 cruiser, not even necessarily this, but I kind of prefer the laid-back seating position. Anyway, Time for the absolute nightmare of getting these stupid carbs back out. Hate this bike so much. On the plus side, the airbox comes out pretty easy. I think there's like there's a wing nut for the lid, and then 4 bolts for the case, and another 2 bolts for this hold down for the air filter. And then you just have to wrestle the most obnoxious fuse box in the world around a bit. Take out all these bolts, remove those things from this side, fuel lines, and then it's just like 3 hours of wiggling to pull it out the side of the bike. It's a lot easier when you've deleted the secondary air injection system like I have. If you haven't done that, at this part you cry because it's just the worst. So let's see, oh, looks like I got a vacuum line there to get rid of. Alright. Yeah, it's hung up on the front. This takes like all 5 of your hands, and then I'll get the throttle cables off of here as well. Yeah, that was super annoying even with the big pear box missing from the bottom, and I don't think I still have that over here. No, yeah, so that's just like this rat's nest of pipes and crap attached to the bottom here. You can see where I plugged it with a thing that takes air from the airbox, fresh air, and uses a Venturi effect to suck it in the exhaust. It's emission stuff. I don't really care. It definitely wouldn't work with this setup. There's no provisions for it on the manifold. So what I'm going to do now is these are old hard rubber, absolutely roached, but I'm not buying new ones, so I'm going to hit these with a heat gun and try and slide them on here, and then this can go in. And of course, the cylinders are offset. The left bank here is for the rearward, so we need to make sure that we have this aligned the same way. We're not going to be using the choke cable or the throttle return cable. We're only using the throttle pull cable here because that's all the carb has. So I've got my heat gun over here somewhere. There it is. And we're going to go ahead and try and shove these on here, I suppose. I need to get some gloves to kind of protect my hands. Don't want to burn my fingies. It's been about a month. So effectively, everything went wrong. And I didn't film a whole lot of it, but here's where we're at with this. Up in there, you can probably just barely see the new carburetor. I had to take a die grinder to the inside of the rubber here, wallow it out a little bit so it fit over these intake runners, but it's all good and sealed up. Unfortunately, when I was tightening these down, one of these intake runners cracked, so I just kind of injected a little silicone in there for now, and it seems to be good. So I got that all in there, and I pumped out all the disgusting evaporust that had evaporated all the rust, and honestly, the entire side of the tank looked pretty okay. So I wired it all up, primed the fuel system, and got it to start. And it started and ran pretty fantastic. It would start with just one bump of the starter button, and it was idling. No adjustment to the carburetor necessary. So I called it a day, and I was going to write it to my friends to get that intake runner TIG welded the next day. So the next day came around, and I hopped on the bike and pulled it out, and I thought I'd go around the block first just to make sure that everything's okay. So I took off around the block, made about halfway through, and it started chugging. Turned back onto my street, made it halfway up the street, and the bike died. And I looked down at my nice transparent fuel filter there and saw it just turn completely black, like just full of mud. So I put down the kickstand, came back here, got some tools to clean out that now clogged fuel filter and limp this thing back home. And at this point I spent 4 hours or so with the fuel tank there and a pressure washer trying my best to clean it out, just spraying and flushing with degreaser and soap and water and more diesel. And eventually the water coming out, the diesel coming out, was completely clear. And I did get, there was like mud in that thing. I don't know why or what that was about, but I got it all out, I thought. So I put it all back together and I took off back down the street, headed down the street. And right as I was turning onto the 4-lane road over there, bike's running great. I kind of hammered it a little bit down the road. And this was after it had been idling till it warmed up, revving, all kinds of stuff in my driveway. It was running perfect. So I get down to the street, turn right. Right as I get on it, I look down just in time to watch the fuel filter just turn black again. The bike dies, and I coast into the McDonald's parking lot. And I ended up stopped just like half in, half out of a parking space with the back end hanging out into where people drive. And it was kind of tilted sort of like this direction. So there was no way for me to put the kickstand down. I had to just hold my hand on the brake for like an hour and a half and hold the bike up for an hour and a half until a friend could come and push it with me a half-mile home. That was exhausting. And at that point, I just kind of made my mind up. I'm bailing on this thing. I'm not doing it. So the other night, it took me a few weeks to get around to it, but the other night I took the carb off, cleaned again, cleaned the fuel filter there. It looks kind of yellow, but it is clean, I assure you. And yeah, there's my fuel filter, or fuel tank. How much is in this, actually? Yeah, it's not bad. So yeah, just a long fuel hose. This took an eternity to prime, so I can never let that run out or I am screwed. But yeah, let's see here. This has been sitting all night. I went out on a nice little ride with it. The front wheel bearings are completely shot, which is kind of terrifying to ride because it feels like the whole front is just a wet noodle. But let's see here. The battery's kind of questionable on this, but neutral. Hate these heel toe shifters. Set the choke by giving it a little rev, or whatever. It needs some tuning. It wasn't, what's weird is it wasn't like this the first time I put it on. I think that carb might still be a little dirty, or it's just because it's significantly hotter out than when I first put all this together, but it runs. There we go. It's a bit better, not quite as smooth as I'd like, but yeah, so a friend of mine is buying this. He's gonna try and fix the fuel tank. I did take this to a couple of shops and they refused to even touch it. They were like, no, it'd be $800 and even then we're not doing it till the off season because this would take up their entire lift for a day or more and they wouldn't be able to work on other projects. So yeah, this generation of Goldwing, just not really a great ownership experience. There we go, it's smoothed out all of a sudden. Huh. So there we have it. That's pretty much where the Goldwing's at. And that's hopefully won't be around much longer because it takes up a lot of space. And then in here, I did not buy an air filter for this because I wasn't sure how much clearance I was dealing with, but you can see in here we've got a couple wires. That one there is for the electric choke, which you set just by snapping the throttle, and then it has a ratchet mechanism. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And then down there is the fuel cutoff solenoid, which protects the the valve and seat from wearing out, from being overpressured. And then that just goes to the accessory terminal there on the fuse block, which is just kind of floating around. Very nice of Honda to include a switched 12 volt for us to use as we please. But that's that whole setup. Only one carb to think about, only one carb to tune. I would love that on like a GL1000 or something that's a little easier to work on and has more parts availability, but parts for the 1200 specifically are just kind of tough to find. Alright, we'll go around the block real quick. Sorry about the camera angle. It's kind of the best I can do with this camera setup. That front wheel bearing sure does make for a wobbly ride. It does feel good to be out on too, though. The idea with this is that hopefully I can fix the Ducati with the money that I get from this. I'm only getting $800 out of this. I think I'm probably $1,600 into it, so Goldwing's 50% off. I can see why people like these. I mean, there's potential here, and my gosh, this flat 4 is smooth. It makes very interesting noise. It's just, between all the just common issues that these have, this generation specifically, the GL1200, does not seem like the ideal ownership candidate to me. An older one would be cool, especially with a Volkswagen carb, or a newer one with fuel injection. My rule with motorcycles from now on is I want one or fewer carbs. I don't want to deal with sinking, and I want a carb sized large enough that because it's feeding all of the cylinders, that it doesn't clog quite as easy. Get on it here real quick. Yeah, this thing's running great now. So sad. I just bought this because I wanted to take it on one road trip. Just one road trip and then sell it, but I'm not going to take it on a road trip like this, and I don't want to put any more money into this thing. Or effort. Mostly effort. Thanks for watching.